No, it's fine. It's good. Hey guys, we're joined today by my teacher, my guru, my friend Royce Ramos, and I'm really happy you can make this time to chop it up a little bit here. And I met Royce last August.
Yeah, about last August. Yeah, you gave us a call and then you came on
Yeah.
through.
So my interest was that I had discovered Kali on the internet during COVID, during a lockdown, and
Oh, yeah.
spent hours a day on YouTube, and you know, I wanted to try something. I wanted to learn another art, another skill set, other than just boxing, and I got really particularly interested in the Kali, and the reason I did was because it's really practical. I mean, you can use it tactically. Where boxing, you're not going to walk around the street with your gloves on and have a referee next to you and carry a time clock with you. So, although it's really great for self-defense in a lot of aspects, what I've learned in my short period of time involved with Pikiti Tirsia, and you can explain to the audience what that is in a second, has been tremendous. And I'm really, really happy I found you, Guru. I'm really happy I found this art. And if you could just give us a little background, who you are, where you're from, and
All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Royce Ramos. I've been training in martial arts since I was very little. Not much has changed. I'm only 5'2", but since I was a young kid, started Taekwondo when I was like 5.5. Did that for several years. Dabbled in a lot of other stuff in between, and like anyone in the '80s, we were enamored by kung fu theater and karate
right.
movies. So that's what kind of drew me in. But it's like I've done other sports, but martial arts is what drew me in. But one thing I was always curious when I was asking my parents, being a first generation American, my parents came from the Philippines and they met here in the US. And I'd asked them, is there a Filipino martial art? Because, everybody has their own. Shoot, American Indians have their own. Where's ours? Oh, it's called Arnis. I'm like, oh, all right. Do you know it? It's like, nope. Does anyone know it? So I spent years looking for a teacher. And then it wasn't until like about 97, around 97, shortly after I graduated high school, one of my closest friends said, I found a teacher. I'm like, and? In Cali. Like, oh, shoot. Mm, that's what we've been doing since. And um, fast forward, it's been 24-ish years training in Pikiti Tirsia Kali and other stuff of course, throughout that time frame. I believe in cross training. I've always believed in cross training. I never felt one art had it all. Actually, it was a dream of mine back in 5th grade to have a martial arts school of my own to teach multiple arts. And I apologize if anyone's hearing any kind of noise or
That's
screeching.
okay. I
We
barely hear
are,
it.
gotta hope so. We are in a mall and there's a racetrack nearby. And the past 24 years has been awesome, in my
So,
opinion.
I wasn't familiar with the differences because Kali is a general term for the Filipino martial arts. And
Yeah.
I mean, so you have Eskrima, Arnis, Bikiti Tertia, and what's
Well,
the other one?
there's a lot of terminology for Filipino martial arts, just like there are in kung fu and karate and or the Japanese arts itself. Uh, I like to joke around when people ask me, "Well, what's Kali?" And I say, "Well, it's Filipino kung fu, it's Filipino
Yeah.
karate, it's Filipino kendo, it's Filipino fencing, because it is all of that and then some." There's Kali is very well. A lot of people don't know about it because it wasn't very prolific until recent years, and with people like pioneers like Grand Tuan Leo Gaye and Tuan Dan and Santos, like pioneering its forefront to the masses in America, it became very big in the Western world, in America, in Europe. Oddly enough, not as much in the Philippines. Filipinos are kind of enamored with foreign stuff. So, a lot of Taekwondo, a lot of Kempo, a lot of Jiu Jitsu, a lot of Brazilian
Muay Thai.
Jiu-Jitsu, Muay Thai, yeah. Even though there are really nice arts associated with the Philippines, and of course, Philippines arts have, like all other arts, have had to be forced to evolve because due to necessity. Aranis and Kali are Spanish in root. Those are names applied to our art during the past 300 during the 300-year occupation of the Philippines by the Spain. Um, what was good to note that Spain never fully conquered all of the Philippines. No country really did, except for the country the not the country but the empire that was before them during the Srivisayan Empire. And Srivisayan, Vishaya, Sri Vajaya. There's so many terminologies and looks at the name, which stem already from India. So if you look at it and how it goes throughout Southeast Asia, you see all the Muslim influences and a lot of similarities of the Southeast Asian arts from Muay Thai, Muay Laithwai, even um, Silat. There's a lot
Hmm.
of similarities there and within FMA. It's just that FMA also adapted to due to the um, what's it called? The Spanish occupation, Spanish fencing, Spanish sword fighting, and so on and so forth.
So for everybody to understand, FMA is an acronym for Filipino Martial Arts. And again, you're a practitioner and a teacher and I'm a student of Pikiti Tirsia, and only I know now, I didn't know at first, but Pikiti means close and Tirsia means thirds. So we're very familiar in the Western world with close quarter combat. This is considered close thirds combat. Could you maybe just elaborate upon that a little bit?
Yeah, well, I don't know if it was due to just the ancient way of measuring, and that's where I believe it came from. They measured things out in thirds, like the concept of the triangle is very prevalent in throughout a lot of martial arts, including Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, as well as Kali and Eskrima and Arnis. Um, to me, like I look at those terms. I don't care which one came first. I respect all three of the terminologies, by the way. Um, I do have certain thoughts regarding the where it came from, but in regards to what Kali is and how it measures, I look at it as several aspects. Three ranges, right? A lot of people talk about 4 or 5 ranges nowadays in fighting, combat, and such. Well, pre-firearm days, you know, there was weapons range, punching, striking range, kicking range. And people say, well, what about grappling? Well, grappling kind of falls under the punching and striking range because it's within your arm's reach.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I see part of that is there. And we also kind of divide the body up into thirds. I kind of change it up to extents personally when I incorporate the center line. But there's top your head area, your torso area, your leg area. So that's another aspect of the third or the thirds of the body as opposed to dividing the body up into quadrants: upper right, upper left, lower right, lower left. So I kind of have a mixed way of teaching. So in order to throw whatever at the wall and see what sticks with most people, you know.
Well, I
But
agree with I like the concept of thirds because when you really think about it, we start talking about trapping range, clinching range, striking range. They're really the range is the same. It's a different technique,
perspective, yeah,
perspective. Yeah, I mean, you're still in that range, whether I'm giving you an elbow or a punch or I'm trapping or I'm clinching, it's still within that range.
exactly. Because even if I'm grabbing somebody and I'm smashing them with an elbow, right? Like just smashing them with the elbow, right? That's considered a close quarter or in close grappling range.
Range, right.
Yet it's also considered striking range because I'm in range of a strike.
But the
So
range remains the same.
right. So even if I'm standing up or on the ground, that distance of 18 inches or so is still the same.
Mm-hmm.
But nowadays it's more incorporated as more considered more as extreme close, which covers like clinching and grappling.
So, so everybody gets I mean, a good understanding of the biggest difference between Kali and Silat to a certain extent, is that it's weapons based, and that it's not a self. It wasn't really intended to be self defense. It was intended to be combat, tactical. You know, where all the other arts don't incorporate weapons. I mean, there's no weapons in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. There's no weapons in Muay Thai other
Well,
than your body.
well, here's the thing. You know, depends on which iteration you're looking at. Okay, so a lot of people think that Muay Thai has no forms and never used weapons, which is not true. In earlier days, they used weapons. They had this big tonfa-looking thing with a blade and spike sticking out of it, you know, and they used it for blocking, striking, clubbing, hooking, so on and so forth. And they had forms. A lot, like a lot of traditional arts, were modeled after like animals and such, like the elephant, the monkey, the alligator. There are techniques called that throughout the Southeast Asian styles, whether it's Muay Thai, Muay Baran, I should say, um, Life Y, and I forgot what the Cambodian version is
Lights wise,
called.
pretty nasty business.
Yeah, see, Life Y is like what Muay Baran used to be. It's the rules of sport changed Muay Thai, but you go back to old school Muay Baran is very much like Life Y. You know, the techniques are still there. The rest is now conditioning and fortitude. Dave Leduc, the Nomad himself, we hosted him a couple years back, and he's a really cool dude, great dude. Um, Lots of shout out to Dave. He's a champion. He's strong. He's capable, and you say whatever you want. He's proven himself on many levels. So you can't argue his ability. You know,
So,
and
can you just run through the thought process behind Kali in general, in terms of you start with weapons, and then the last thing you learn is your hands and your grappling.
all right, and just so you know, there are other arts that do utilize weapons first and primarily, or not first or primarily, but utilize weapons in conjunction with empty hand techniques.
Sure. Yeah.
Shaolin Kung Fu does
Kung
that,
Fu, yeah.
right? One of the few arts that actually does that. Um, Not many do. Karate tends to pick up weapons as you go. Sometimes midway, sometimes towards the end, and once you hit black belt. So the reason why we choose to do the weapons is that it's one, no war was ever won without
Right.
weapons, right? Thank you, Mark. It's a great saying, and I use it a lot nowadays. It's true. Two, back in the early days, you know, one of the things they used to say was during a lot of the tribalistic wars between tribes back in the day, and to avoid pirates and marauders, you know, they wanted a simple enough art to teach farmers and hands and, you know,
Children.
children and women how to defend themselves. These are fishermen and farmers, you know. They're not, so they had to be able to take care of themselves, and you're not going to expect them to man up against larger, more armored people. So the weapon was their advantage. Remember, when you use weapon, it's a force multiplier. It is always an advantage. Like there's no such thing as a fair fight in a street fight.
Right.
It's just reality. I'm 5'2". Someone jumps me. Oh, I should fight them barehanded when they're 6'4" and full of muscles.
Right.
It doesn't quite work that way. You know what I mean? So
Oh yeah, no, absolutely, and that's. But getting back to the weapons, I mean, so my perspective, because I'm the student, is that you're teaching me platforms that can be. So it's like boxing. When I teach boxing, we start with the jab. Then I teach the cross. Then I teach a hook. Then I teach uppercuts. Then we start talking about slipping and rolling and footwork, and it's all kind of one and the same. But what it leads to is being able to shadow box where you're just being creative. And
right.
I'm finding it's the same thing when you do a carenza, which is the Filipino term for shadow boxing, essentially.
Yes. So we train the weapons first primarily because when you lose a weapon, you still have your hands. So the traditional way in traditional arts that we know of, you working up to the weapon, is like you're working twice. So you do all these blocks and these punches and all the techniques as you move up, and then you grab a weapon, and then you're like trying to swing it, and you're like a beginner again. You're like, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
Like you have people collecting sticks, and there's like red belt, brown belt, black belt, and they hear that clack, and they're like, oh my god, they're not desensitized to it. So when you're fighting with hands, it's great. But then when you see a weapon, suddenly our brains shut down. We're like, oh shoot, now we're scared. We're fearful. So part of the reason why we do the weapons first is, one, to develop the desensitization to the weapons, so we understand how weapons work. If you understand how weapons work, you respect the weapon more so. You know how to defend against it more so.
Mm-hmm.
You understand the capability of a weapon. You understand their range, angle of attack, and of course, consequences of getting hit by one. So you learn how to develop a certain sense of avoidance and evasion already, but also when you train with a respectful partner, preferably, when you strike and strike and strike, you start to hear that clack, that clack, that clack. So that starts, one, you start to get used to that. Two, you get used to this, weapon coming at you constantly, right? That to the point where, like, you start to move, right? That later on, someone comes like that, you're like,
that's it. You just
move
react. You
automatically.
don't have to think about it. Yeah.
And it's not like an overreaction, like, oh my god. It's like, and you don't know how many times I almost gotten hit in the head by someone nearby, not paying attention to what they're doing. I'm like, vroom.
Well, I got hit in the head because I did it to myself when I was.
A lot of people do.
And that's what to me is really fascinating about the weapons in Pikiti Tirsia and Kali in general. There's so many of them. So you have the bastons, the sticks, the rattan sticks. How long are those, Guro? What are they, about 3 feet roughly?
Close, not even 2.5. The average stick you usually see is around 28 inches. Certain styles, like I believe Serrata usually uses like a 24 to 26 inch. Some schooling even teaches at 18 to 20. It depends on the preferences and what they're showing. Tuan Mel himself usually uses a 30 to 32. I use anywhere from 28 to 32 myself. So I like to practice with a lot of different things. Anywhere from obviously empty hand, small knife,
So
small
again,
sword. Yeah,
you got sticks, you got staff, which is
5 feet, 6 feet. Yeah,
5-6 feet long. Then you have straight blade, karambit, which for people that don't know the karambit, it looks like a claw, and it has a retainer clip on it, a really strong grip. Then you have my favorite is what?
The balisong. Yeah,
balisong.
Yeah,
And that's my widget. It's so much fun, and it's a deadly weapon if you get that competency. Swords. You have the bolo and all different types of different swords.
Yeah.
What am I forgetting?
Well, there's so many things. Like in the Filipino arts, there's a lot. We even have shields. We have spikes. We use there or palm sticks, so to say. There's a lot of things. I've even used the wasai, the axe.
The axe. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And what's the small kubaton?
Kubaton. Well, kubaton is a palm stick or dulo. Usually made out of horn or wood. I've also used, improvised weapons, flexible weapons. They use a sarong.
Sarong. Explain the sarong. I don't think people are going to be familiar. I wasn't familiar with it, but what is the sarong?
The sarong is a long piece of fabric. It's either a sarong or a malong. They're used as like a sash or
could be a scarf.
It's a traditional garment that they would wear around their waist or over their shoulders. They use it for a lot of things. They could unravel it and use it for carrying. Hold on 1 second. Yeah, go for it. DCR 010 is Bluetooth. Sorry.
Okay.
What's it called?
Sarong.
It can be utilized as like a carrying fabric for shopping, or their child, a number of things, right? And of course, depending on what you do, like soldiers, you'll even see people in certain areas of Malaysia and Southeast Asia and southern Philippines still wear them because they use it as part. It's traditional, and they can take it off and they can utilize it as a garment for self-defense. They can use it to protect themselves with it. It's something that's an option. You see the people in the movies, they take their shirts off to protect their arms against knives and stuff. We take it a little bit further from just wrapping around the arm to protect ourselves, but now we can use it to kind of trap and capture an arm
Right.
or a weapon. Sorry,
That's
and
okay.
use it to trap an arm or a weapon, or use it to capture, sneak around, and grapple with an opponent. Now, again, it becomes a force multiplier. It becomes something to use against an opponent, whether it's to capture the arm, break the arm, wrap around the neck, choke. You can use it, and when you get used to using something like that, you can use your shirt. Take your shirt off, use your shirt. You can use your jacket. You can use your belt. You can use your purse strap if you're a woman.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of things are usable.
So, and
Jacket.
again, that's the beauty of the whole platforms and systems. And you touched upon it with improvised weapons. So, and you'll, like you said, you see it in the movies, and I've come to find out that just Kali is used predominantly in movies for hand-to-hand weapons and even improvised weapons.
Yeah.
That they're using a Kali instructor or a Kali practitioner to
Yeah,
lay out the fight scene.
the martial arts have been Filipino martial arts has been used in fight scenes for years, since the '80s. A lot of people don't know that, but there are a lot of people who, like, say, have been doing stunt work and fight choreography, but they, instead of just getting into a whole conversation about what they're doing and people being resistant to it, they would okay, we're gonna do this technique, we're gonna do this technique, and people would be like, whoa, that's cool, let's do it, not knowing that they're doing Filipino martial arts. People like who've done,
Well, Keanu Reeves
oh yeah,
for the
Keanu
Matrix was
Reeves.
all Kali.
Yeah, there's a lot of Kali in the
And,
Matrix. There
and
was the Born Identity
Born
movies,
Identity. Yeah.
Book of Eli, I Frankenstein, um, a lot. There's a
So
number.
with the
300.
improvised weapons, and I knew this for a while, and when I would talk to women's groups or whatever, I always talk about, hey, you could use a tightly rolled up newspaper or magazine as a weapon, but I didn't know
Yeah,
really how to use it. Now I do, because now it's just become my stick.
yeah. So here's the thing, right? We teach the weapon, but we're not teaching that we rely on the weapon. Anyone who thinks that's what FMA is, they're wrong. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
people will say you don't want to do that art because you're not going to walk around with a stick all the time,
So,
and they don't get it.
yeah,
They don't get it. They'll never, or they do get it, but that's not what. But in order to not lose a potential student, they might say that,
right,
because
right.
unfortunately, in terms of the world of business and martial arts, it's about don't go there, stay with us kind of thing. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I don't like doing that. I've been in a business of 15 years where you have to prove yourself, sell yourself. So I rather
Right.
sell myself than prove to other people suck or horrible people when there's no truth to it or
Well,
there's no proof.
that's a common discussion in the martial arts, or in this, I would say not in the martial arts community, in the self-defense community,
Yes,
about, is it BJJ, is it Muay Thai, is it boxing, is it FMA?
like I
It's
said,
all good. It's
it's
all
like
good.
I said. It's
Yeah.
it's Filipino BJJ. It's
Right.
Filipino karate. It's Filipino jiu-jitsu. It's Filipino this and that.
Well, one of the things that you and I have discussed quite often is the fact that, in my realm of boxing, the stance that we assume really only was a Filipino stance, because up to that point we had that old, I don't know if you
Yeah,
can see me in there. Yeah, which was really because that's how the British carried their quarterstaff.
yeah,
And because the Filipinos were using a bolo, their hands were tighter and closer. And I think it was when we went over in the early 1900s, when I say we, the Americans, and took on the Moro tribe, we learned a lot of things from them. One of them is
yeah.
how to box correctly, and
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 the
to take the
Filipinos got
conversation.
basketball.
Yeah, yeah, and that was a great trade. But I
Oh,
mean,
the
even
Pacquiao
even to
likes it.
when we look at Pacquiao and not all, but a lot of the Filipino fighters are southpaws because that's how you start with a stick, right hand, right foot, lead.
And see, and there's some people in some styles that do teach weapon to the rear versus weapon to the lead. We do teach both aspects.
Both, yeah.
You've seen it, but because weapon to the rear is sword and shield,
Correct.
so it's a very sword and shield approach. Weapon to the lead is, you see that like in fencing.
Yeah.
That's why I say it's like Filipino fencing.
In fact, I don't mean to interrupt you, but my friend Bill Brown, my buddy Bill Brown, who was SEAL Team 8, when we were talking about knife, he said that they were taught rear hand and using this hand and be willing to sacrifice some flesh to be able to come in. They were taught that way, sword and knife.
Yeah. So and that's the case, because you used to see it a lot, like in the old movies. They're always like lead hand, because you're using the hand to grab or protect, like a shield. And to us, this is a valuable asset in at least in PTK, right? The live hand is very valuable, right? You've heard our saying, right? Live hand keeps you alive, dead hand keeps you dead, right?
Right.
Just like in boxing, you don't drop that second hand.
Nope.
Right? This might be a shield, but this is also a lot more. It's a counter strike, it's an attack, it's a grab, it's an eye gouge, it's a poke, it's a choke strike, it's a groin strike, it's grab another weapon. So why do I want to lose this as an opportunity? If that's the case, why don't I put the weapon this side and let this use the work and then put another weapon in my hand? Oh, look, double weapons.
Yeah.
Right? Which then becomes your striking.
So what do you attribute the fact that, in general, Kali and Pikiti Tirsia in particular, the tactical community has embraced it so much? I mean, if you look at Jared, you look at Tim Wade, you look at so many other practitioners of Kali or Pikiti are going out and working with special operations. They're working with law enforcement and SWAT teams. And what do you attribute that to? Is it the fact that it's
practical?
Pardon?
It's practical.
Right.
It's the number one aspect of it is practicality throughout everyday daily life. I joke around and tell people, hey, have you ever watched Shaolin Soccer?
Yeah.
It's a fun kung fu movie and everything, but their joke was that their thing was that kung fu is in everything. Same thing in Kali. Every martial arts in daily life. Martial arts is to quote one of the grandmasters that we work with, Grandmaster Paul Dyer, and he said that he would always say that the martial arts is a science of how the human body moves.
Right.
And I agree with it. So you look at when you box, you're learning how to manipulate your body in every way, shape, or possible to be as effective as possible in striking. But look at how economically, effectively, efficiently, right? Tons of aspects. And if you look at that, it applies in daily life. Just a lot of people don't tend to see it. I had an elderly gentleman walk in here and he's like, wow, I haven't done martial arts forever. He's really enamored. He's liking it. And I'm like, no, it's all good. But he's saying he had a little bad lower back and complaining and showing how he moves. I said, oh, sir, why are you going through all that trouble? Why don't you just drop in a horse stance and pick something up from there? You squat to pick up. Don't kneel. Don't bend your body down and because he had back surgery. So that's what I was going over of. Hold on 1 second. Switching right to left. Got it?
Royce is still teaching while we're talking, and I appreciate your time.
No worries, no worries.
Hey, you know what I find interesting, Royce, is that yourself, Doug Marcaida, I'm probably saying his name wrong. Marcaida. Yeah. And Santo, we're all Filipino Americans. Right?
Well, actually, Doug, I believe he came here when he was young. If I remember correctly.
Essentially, they didn't learn the old way it was taught in the Philippines, which is on in the field or on the farm, so to speak.
Right. Yes. John Dennis said a lot of various stories of how he came up and learning martial arts. But I like to talk about the time I first met John Dan when he was. It's all good. We both have something. So
Probably the UPS driver.
yeah. So Guru Dan,
Hold on one
go
second.
for it. Go for it.
Sophie, come here, Sophie.
Someone's not giving their enough attention to their dog. That's what it is, guys. You gotta stop. You gotta stop neglecting Sophie.
It's the FedEx guy. I was right. Anyway,
So
yeah.
yeah, I was gonna say. So when I first met Tuan Dan, when he was still Guru Dan, was back in 2004 at actually an event in Maryland that it was a big FMA event, and I was thinking about it. I could grab the picture off the wall, and it was great. I went down there with my teacher and one of my other fellow students at the time, and we drove down there. I was with my teacher, Grand Tuan Leo Guy, and Tuan Dan and Santos, and it was an event that was headed by Tuan Apollo Ladra, actually.
Just so people know, because probably there's going to be a good amount of people that don't know who Insanto is. Tell because there's a very recognizable name.
Yes. So Tuan Dan Santos is he trained with Bruce Lee back in the day. He was a very close friend with Bruce Lee before he passed, and he's one of the main instructors who was authorized by the Lee family to teach and carry on the tradition of Jeet Kune Do that Sifu Bruce had bestowed upon the world, and he teaches it. And I really like how he puts it, because there's some people that teach Jeet Kune Do as an art per se, but Tuan Dan has always pressed it as the concept of Jeet Kune Do, because it's not supposed to be an art. It's supposed to be something that helps people understand and grasp the concept of training other arts to find what works best for you, and utilize those skills, techniques, and tactics, and develop your own style that makes you different than following certain traditional lines and,
in a sense, it was almost
motions.
The genesis of MMA, right?
Correct.
You want to, yeah.
Well, a lot of people kind of look at Jeet Kune Do as like the father of modern day MMA. Should even look at the gloves. The fingerless gloves was actually, when Bruce Lee had them, was originally Kempo gloves with the fingertips cut off. With the Kempo gloves were too big for his hands, so they cut the fingertips off, and then boom, you have a Kempo glove. You look at the old school, the old kung fu and karate book magazines. You see Kempo gloves with the fingertips. So they look exactly like modern day MMA gloves, but then when they cut the tips off, boom, now you have MMA gloves. And you actually allowed you to grip and grapple a little bit better, because not everybody's fingers fit perfectly if you're not going to get a customized grip. And he just is a phenomenal man. He's 84, 85 years old now. He's moves like he's in his 50s or 40s even. He became a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu not too long ago, a couple of years ago. At his age, still doing martial arts, and he's done a plethora of different arts, from Southeast Asian styles to different styles of Filipino martial arts, kung fu. Of course, he learned Wing Chun. He was a Kempo man back in the day, but he also knew a lot of FMA. And then he learned Wing Chun, Jun Fan Wing Chun, which is Bruce Lee's art. And then he also brought FMA to Jeet Kune Do and presented it with Bruce Lee, and now they collaborated, and eventually that's how Jeet Kune Do developed even further, which was amazing. I like that bit of history. Some people argue against that, but it's like, well, why wouldn't you apply it? Jeet Kune Do was never supposed to stop evolving. Jeet Kune Do was all about learning and blending and making things work for you. So anyone who says that, that's not real Jeet Kune Do because it has FMA in it, or has some other art in it, you're wrong. If someone said, if someone does Sanshou and added it to their Jeet Kune Do, why can't they?
There's a quote that I mentioned to you many times, and I mentioned is, it doesn't matter what color the cat is as long as it kills the mouse.
Basically.
Yeah. So like in my realm of boxing, there's always, do you throw your hook this way or you turn it over? I don't really care as long as it
Yeah,
lands. You know,
exactly. Like there are
whatever works
reasons.
for you is fine,
You
as
know,
long as the
if you
basic foundation is there.
yeah, you're gonna stir the pot and connect and whatever
Yeah.
works, right?
Yeah.
Whether you want to do
Yeah.
this hook, or this hook.
Right. And
People are like,
again,
why would
even that's context driven too, because it depends what range you're in,
you?
and what type of hook you're throwing. Are you throwing a check hook, or are you throwing a hook off the two,
Yeah.
or is it
Or if
off a
you
jab where it's more of a slap just to move a guy over so you can nail him with the right hand?
exactly. Or if it's this is on the street and you want to throw a nice couple knuckles to someone's temple or break or
Yeah.
nose or eye, this is very useful too.
Yeah,
I mean,
and that's the whole point of it. That's for me why. Maybe I'm making a big assumption here, but I think my grasp a little bit was easier for me only because I had similar footwork down from boxing, working on
yes.
45-degree angles and just basic concepts of movement. Because really what it is like we've talked about many times, you have two arms, two legs, and body can only move so many different ways.
Right. And there's only so many ways you can swing a stick too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, people want to say, oh, you don't want to do that art because of this. You want to do that art because of that. Let me tell you, if you start off in a traditional martial art, you'll learn FMA better if you have an open mind. Plus,
Right.
the footwork you see in FMA is in traditional arts, is in Kung Fu, is in Japanese arts, is in a lot of things. Whether they want to see it or not, it's there.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, there's only so many ways we could move. And like I said, weapons help improve your hand and eye coordination,
Absolutely.
your striking dynamics. A lot of people don't realize what's there because they don't give time to slowly dissect and analyze what they're doing. Everybody just wants, oh, I just want to learn how to beat somebody up. Very traditional approach to people wanting to learn martial arts. Oh, I don't want to do this. Oh, I quit karate because it was boring. I quit taekwondo because it was boring. I quit boxing because it was boring. It was boring. What the hell were you doing?
You didn't
That's
take it
one.
far enough.
Right. Two, and you let oh, my son did it, or my daughter did it, but they wanted to quit because it was boring, and you let that happen. You said, oh, it's okay, honey, it's okay to quit. You're gonna start teaching a kid it's okay to be a quitter at an early age. What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
No, you put them in, watch them develop. If they develop, if you find they're not developing, shoot, you might want to find a new teacher.
Right. Well, I mean, and along those lines, Guro, that's why we use the word master, because it takes
Yeah.
years of practice, and mastering anything. I don't care if it's mastering playing the guitar or shooting a basketball, or whatever it is. You got to put the time in. You got to learn the foundation. You got to learn the fundamentals, and then you got to build upon that. Sometimes the fundamentals, they can be kind of tedious, and you're like, what are we doing this for? But down the road, you go, oh, that's why we were doing this, because it'll all the bridging, as we often talk about in FMA, bridging different platforms, and again, that's why. So people get another understanding of Kali, and I only know this since I met you, but the Philippines, what did I know? I'm just a dumb kid. I thought the Philippines was one island. It's seven.
Ooh.
How many? Seven.
Depends on the tide.
Yeah.
7,500 islands on the low tide, 7,100 and change at high tide. Of course, the islands that are occupied, the Philippines is the largest archipelago in the world. It has the largest island chain, home to millions of Filipinos and lots of islands. And with that,
I was surprised
lots of styles.
The population is 100 million people.
Mm-hmm.
I was really surprised by that. I didn't, think it was that popular. So that's where you get the different styles of Kali, correct? I mean, certain regions, maybe this is one, and then this is two in Pikiti, maybe one, and this is
So
just a different.
The belief is that the heart of FMA is in Cebu because
it's going to be one of those interviews. I got a feeling.
Yeah.
It's an Amber Alert.
Yeah, it's by you, not me. Oddly enough, usually we get it too.
2-year-old abducted. Great. Awesome.
It's horrible. Oh, I hate that. So
As far as the different regions.
Oh yeah, regions. Thank you. So the contention was point of contention is that the heart of FMA is in Cebu, because that's where the island of Mactan is near Cebu, and that's where Datu Lapu-Lapu, who was a great chieftain back in the day, had rallied a lot of tribes and people to fight against Magellan at the time, who was going around doing what Spanish the Spaniards do best, just invade and proliferate. So, the story of Mactan is actually pretty ingenious. What Lapu Lapu did, and it's also the probably the origins of Filipino time. Always late to a battle. But you have to think about it. The Philippines had weapons well before Spain arrived. They've had shields, they've had armor, they've had swords, different types of blades and swords and spears. Because of our association with other nations and countries. The reason why the Philippines was sought after by Spain was because it was a treasure trove. It's a strategically ideal location. And also the reason why the U.S. wanted it, and also why Japan wanted it, also why Germany wanted it, Korean and even China now wants it.
Right. Yeah.
So they fought, and that's where it was. But if you look at some of the blades, you have northern islands and the Visayas, and then southern area of the Moros, western and eastern sides, and all different types of weapons based on the region. Just like you look at different types of kung fu in China, it's like why is their style this way and in our style this way? We're both Shaolin. Well, one's in the mountains and one's in a forest or whatever. You develop differently based on your region. Same thing with the weapons. Different types of trees and brush require different types of blades. Maybe some of the brush is thicker or denser kind of plant life. Maybe it's more vicious wildlife. So you're going to develop your blades a little bit differently to meet the requirements.
That's what particularly allures me to the whole art, is the fact that it was passed along in families in villages, and that you had in some instances had to hide your art. And
yes.
Talk to us about the candelabra.
Yes. So you look at different things. A lot of people would talk about, and it's not true, but it is if you look at it nice and easily. We have different types of dances. One of them is the tinikling, which is the crane dance, where you have the long rattan poles, and they'll like clap it down.
Yeah.
It's called the crane trap dance, and the dancer would step their feet in and out of the poles, and they're going to go as fast as they can during the rhythm to try to capture the crane or the dancer. So that's footwork training and innovation.
It's almost like double dutch that they do in the city.
Yes,
the ropes,
but it hurts more.
It does hurt a little bit more.
It hurts more. But and what's cool with that is that if you watch some of these performances, it's amazing. You're maneuvering just like the double dutch. They're doing low and high and twisting and turning and emoting different things. So it's a lot of physical skill there, and that's footwork. Just like capoeira, when it developed as a slave art, because a slave fighting art, because they got to use their legs because their hands were always bound. And there's similar techniques. Our cross step or serrata step is very similar to the Jenga.
Talk about the candles, though. That really is an amazing.
So the dance is called Candelaria, and what happens is you'd have a candle. Nowadays they use a little battery light, but back in the day they use a little candle, and they'd have to kind of maneuver the candle around, and the mechanics of movement is also getting in and out of wrist locks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? So it was already pre-built in. Now there's another dance, I can't remember the name of it. I just call it the coconut dance
Yes.
because guys would wear coconut shells. Well, guys and gals would wear coconut shells, and they'd have coconut shells in their hand, and they'd be clack, 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 clack. But it's all our mechanics, our passing, our parrying, our evasions are built into the dance.
Yeah.
So I never did it. My parents never put me into those traditional things, but there weren't really many back in the 80s. You had to be a part of a tighter knit Filipino community, which I was not part of at that time. But I always, whenever they came up, we would always go to watch them. It was always fantastic for me to
So,
see. I enjoyed it.
do you think there's a much greater appreciation of Kali currently in the United States? I think I
Oh,
see it.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. And I hope it keeps growing. The
Yeah.
problem I find with people that, is still not quite recognizable,
Mm-hmm.
which is fine with me because that's part of my job is to
Be an ambassador.
propagate FMA, propagate, you know, Pikiti Tirsia Kali. This has been out of, oh God, I started when I was 5.5. I turned 40. Out of almost 40 years of training martial arts, I've been doing 24 years in Pikiti Tirsia.
So tell the audience, how do we get a hold of you? Where are you located? What else you offer at your school? So if anybody's
All right.
interested, I strongly suggest you get up by Royce.
Thank you again. Mark, you've been great with everything, and you're picking and learning everything up because you understand that your mechanics are your mechanics, and you know how to understand. But you have a great amount of experience as a coach
Mm-hmm.
in both hockey and boxing. That you can see things and you can apply it, and and as a trainer, you know how to help people achieve those goals. So you see that. That's great. For everybody to if you want to contact me, obviously you can contact me here on Facebook. You can contact me on Instagram or on our page at sign Nomad KACF, as in short for Nomad Kali and Combat Fitness. You can check out our website at www.nomadkacf.com. And you can also contact us via phone, text, or phone call. Good old fashioned technology at 845-218-9784. Again, that is 845-218-9784. Um, Other things that we do here aside from
And
our
you're located though. Where you're located?
oh yes, we are located in the Palisades Center in West Nyack, New York. We are about 25-30 minutes north of New York City, right across the bridge from Westchester and White Plains. No, we are not upstate. Upstate is significantly further up from us.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, I live in Mahwah, New Jersey, and it's 20 minutes. It's right
yeah,
up the highway. Yeah.
my mother used to commute to Lenox Hill Hospital on 77th.
Yeah.
So from here, because it's actually not a bad drive. It's actually better than,
Well,
you know,
besides the Kali, you have
yeah. Besides the Kali, right,
other
which
combat.
we train because we're in the mall. We're open basically 7 days a week. We close for special occasions, of course. The Kali we're doing twice a day, Monday through Friday. That's 10 times a week. We also offer Kaju Kembo, which is a hard style of martial arts. You could look at Kaju Kembo as the grandfather of modern day American mixed martial arts because it was an art that was developed in the early 40s in Hawaii, right? American, right? And they by several black belt grandmasters who wanted to continue their training beyond black belt. So
Mm-hmm.
that gives you an idea of how badass the art is.
Yeah.
You combine elements of Tang Sudo karate, which is Korean karate. I know how much they hate to say that. Um, Japanese judo and jiu-jitsu, Japanese Hawaiian kempo, Chinese chuan fa. Back then, it used to be known as Chinese boxing. So, Kaju Kenbo.
Right.
So it covers a lot of the aspects of striking and kicking and grappling, stand up and takedown and throws. Also, it has elements of Eskrima in it because the main grandmaster at the time, Siju Adrian Emperado, he was a Filipino Hawaiian. He knew FMA from when he came from the Philippines, so he brought that into the art. And you see that in a lot of some of the self-defense. Even some of the techniques like the parry and check of Kajikembo is very similar to our etiquette in our FMA because it's where it came from there, right? In mostly traditional art where they usually use a lot of hard blocking styles, he's doing a parry to a check and grab. So that's literally from FMA. And then we also do combat jiu-jitsu, and that's also uh, a mixed style of jiu-jitsu styles. I believe 4 jiu-jitsus and a judo style and a bow style, right? This was taught to my associate Sensei Frankie Di Maria, who teaches the Kaiju Kembo class as well as the combat jiu-jitsu class, and he's under the jiu-jitsu under Soki Michael Di Pasquale, and it's a really great practical aspect of jiu-jitsu, Japanese jiu-jitsu. And when you look at it, it's like some people look at it and think, "Wow, is that Kaiju Kembo?" And people who do combat jiu-jitsu looking at Kaiju Kembo, and they're like, "Is that combat jiu-jitsu?" There's such an overlap of the techniques. Is great. We teach them both separate, but they actually complement each other very well.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, when you overlap it with the Kali, it's just fantastic. And of course, we teach MMA, boxing, kickboxing.
Yeah, well, again, that goes back to what we were just talking about previously, that it's all good. I mean, and one of the quotes I heard, and I kind of like it, learn a lot, use a little.
Mm-hmm.
Like on a real world application, you're going to use whatever necessary at that point to nullify or eliminate the assaulter or whatever the case may be.
Well, here's the thing, right? And I'm very much a traditionalist in training, but I also like to be as innovative as possible. That's why I have the combat fitness program. I like functional muscle group training. People who don't understand how important fitness training is to their martial arts is severely lacking in understanding. It is part of martial arts. It's been part of martial arts since day one. Good again, Martial, Mars, the Art of War. You have to train. You have to be fit. Because what good is training all this stuff, but you can't move but 13 seconds without dying from a heart attack?
It's not important how strong you are. It's important how long you can be strong.
Mm-hmm. And we have had that conversation from dealing with you're not going to push someone out of a car that's burning. You're going to pull them out of a car that's burning. You need to have functional muscle groups working for you. So we try to make sure we cover those bases because that's going to apply. That complements the training. And then what we like to do is pre-fatigue the body too. So that way when you do the training, the repetitions set in sooner than just starting from dry and I'm going to do 1,000 punches. Well, why don't I make it that time more efficient? It's not just it's not just the reps. Repetition is the mother of skill. But remember, if you're a little bit more innovative about it, those repetitions count more so if you're more effective with the training. So you do something that remember, it's not about the time you put in, but what you put into that time. So if you're going to put
absolutely, yeah.
If you're going to set it right and do the training right, instead of doing 10,000 reps in 2 hours, why not do 500 reps in 30 minutes, and it's more effective.
Right. Well, I just got done reading one of my numerous books. Yeah. And so this is Human Mindset, I think the name of the book is. But anyhow, they did research and they found that 20 minutes for, say, 10 days or 20 days is better than trying to cram everything into a 3-hour.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Just like the concept of studying for school. It's like the worst thing you can do is cram.
Yeah.
Because you didn't study all semester. You cram in 2 days, and come test day, you're blank.
And as you know, because to learn a battle song deployments, it's not difficult, but it's not easy. but I put my time in every morning,
Yeah.
every day.
You
Didn't
know, I
miss a
get.
beat, and you know,
Well, you again. There's that solid old school training you had, and your level of responsibility and dedication. You send me videos all the time saying, "Look what I'm doing," and it's great. I love it. I wish more of my guys would do that, but everybody has life,
yeah,
to get away, and it's easy to let life be an excuse. I did it myself,
absolutely.
unfortunately. I'm not ashamed
We
to
all
admit
did.
that.
We all
Yeah,
did. Part
humans,
of being
right?
human. So before we wrap it up, combat. Now I don't know if this is true, but I heard it's the combat is an acronym for counter or movement before attack time.
Actually,
Is it-
it's actually counter on motion before attack time
Oh, that's what it
or
is. Counter
attack
on.
timing.
Yeah.
So the concept is that you're gonna immediately counter on the motion your opponent makes immediately,
Mm-hmm.
and it's either the attack time or their attack timing. It's when they move, you move,
Right.
and
Right.
you're
Right.
gonna counter their strike immediately. So we have a drill called defanging a snake, and again
Yeah.
another point of contention by
If
certain
anybody
people.
watches Cobra Kai, you heard that a
Yeah.
lot.
So here, and which is funny. So I'm gonna make a special shirt regarding Cobra Kai, but
Yeah.
so defanging the snake, I asked you before, but anybody out there, have you ever thought of how to defang a snake? Right? Right? Are you gonna grab a snake by the neck and try to pluck in a fang out, especially a poisonous snake's fangs out? No, you're not gonna. You're not gonna do that. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna take a snake, put it down, and you're gonna chop its head off. That's how you defang the snake. That's the
Yeah.
reality. So when we have our weapon, right? Right? When you have your weapon, this is supposed to be the fang, this is supposed to be the snake, right? This is the analogy, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So you want to attack the hand because that's where the weapon is being held. This is the analogy of the snake, this is the head of the snake, you defang it, generally should be good. People but what there's a greater analogy to that, a greater meaning to that. Because when you don't have a weapon, these are the fangs. These are the fangs. This is the snake. The body is the snake. This is the head. You take the head,
Yeah.
obviously not literally, but if
Well, I don't know about
there
that.
are situations for certain people, but not that's why a lot of people headhunt. They want to knock the
Right.
guy out right away. But sometimes that's not always easy to do because you're trying to knock somebody else out who's trying to knock you out.
Right.
So how do you defang the snake? You take these out of the play. They take their limbs out of the play. Easier said than done, but obviously when you train, you put in the repetitions, you train the different aspects, you do the repetitions, you keep it in your system. Like I try to go back as often as possible because I didn't do that as much when I did Taekwondo, to review and redo all the kali that I've learned because I know what it's like to try to rebuild from memory stuff I never did, and I'm a big fan of notebooks. I need to put stuff down
Yeah. Me too.
so I can always go back to it. So all my guys require. By the way, if you ever come by and you're interested, we do require you to have notebooks, guys, because it's important, and I want that will help you because humans learn three ways, right? Visually, audibly, and kinesthetically. So kinesthetically, you're doing the movements. That's great, but can you remember that? People are visual
Mhm.
learners. Well, you will remember all the time by seeing. If you see and you do, now you learn twice as fast. You hear, you listen, you see, you do. Now you learn it three times as fast. You take a notebook and you write down what you're doing and you say it out loud to yourself and out in your memory. Now you learn four times as fast.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
At least that's
Um,
how I feel.
I write down everything every day. What all my workouts, whether it's Kali, whether it's boxing, whether it's um, PT, whatever it is, I keep a journal.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm a little bit lazy with the Kali notebook. I just take a snapshot of what you write on the board, and then in my phone, I have an album where I put all the
Well,
videos that we.
at least you're doing the album. No one's doing the album, which
Yeah,
is
I have two albums. I have one is the written stuff, and one is the videos that when you're demonstrating or we're working together.
yeah.
Royce, Guru, I can't thank you enough. This was a great interview, despite the FedEx and the dog barking and the Amber Alert.
Yeah,
You know,
I got
it's
race
life,
cars
man.
over here, so it's all good. I know.
It's just life. right?
Yeah.
We're not fancy. We're not in a studio. We're real people. And we're just trying to spread and again, I can't thank you enough for your knowledge. And I continue to learn every time I leave the building, I learn something else. And that's what I strive for.
Yeah, remember, no matter where you go, you got to take something home.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So that's a Filipino way, by the way. If you ever see a bunch of older Filipinos go to a party or something, they bring out their Tupperware and fill it up. Take something home.
It goes home.
I'm kidding.
Great stuff, Guru. I will
right.
see you in a little bit, and I appreciate your time, and all the best.
No, thank you again for the opportunity. You have a great day, and I'll see you in class soon.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you.